Sounded Good is filled with opinions, and though these opinions may be shared with fervor and conviction, they remain in essence opinion only. What About Amiobi and J. Ray Gun do not represent PGA Tour 2K21, 2K Sports, TGC Tours, or any other company, group, or individual mentioned or insinuated. We're just two guys with too much time on our hands. Welcome to
Sounded good.
Hey guys, J. Ray Gun here to mention a couple of things before the show starts. One, if you're watching this on YouTube, about halfway through we lost Amiobi's video feed, so you'll be treated to a nice stand-in photo for the rest of the video. Two, during recording we ran a bit long. Well, more like an hour long. So regardless of what you'll hear in the introduction, we're reserving our designer do's and don'ts for a future episode. This episode will mostly focus on some of the history of TGC Tours as a community, as well as the process that new designers go through when submitting a course to the TGC Tours database. I also need to apologize for the rather abrupt ending, as there just wasn't a great place to cut the episode in half. We're both still learning. Enjoy!
Hello, everyone. Jay Raygun here, along with
What About Amiobi?
And we are back for episode 2 of Sounded Good. Last week, we took a look at some of the recent swing mechanics changes that have happened in the game and how it's affected the day-to-day play, and how it's affected some societies and some content creators, and basically the general feeling throughout the community of how these changes are for better or for worse, and what we may see going forward. We also took a look at the World Cup of Design contest that had recently finished. Again, congratulations to Strathmore for winning that one, B101. And we also have one that is finishing up soon in the Design Syndicate. Not an official TGC Tours design contest, but it is garnered its own following, and it has some implications in terms of what these guys can win with that contest. So it's a big opportunity for them to get their name out there, get their courses out there. This week, we're going to take a little deeper look into TGC Tours, what it is, how it functions in terms of both hosting its society plays and also its role in the design community. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some do's and don'ts for designers out there that we have come up with. Some from the designer side, some from playthrough side, getting a couple of different looks at it here. And they'll finish up with some final thoughts. But for now, let's go ahead and get into it with what exactly is TGC Tours. And Wayne, maybe you can talk us through how you first heard about TGC Tours and how you got involved.
Sure. So the first time I ever heard of TGC Tours was on one of Crazy Canuck 1985's live streams on YouTube. I'm not sure how he ended up in my recommended, but I clicked on it. He was doing a design stream. I think he might have done some playthroughs too. And at the bottom of the screen, he had this little ticker going along, and it's like, here's the courses he's created, da 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 da. And then one of them was looking for the #1 site for cross-platform play on PGA Tour 2K21. Visit tgctours.com to learn more. It intrigued me, so I checked it out, read the rules of it, and saw that they were playing on Masters, and I went, I have a hard time on Pro right now.
Yeah.
So I thought, the idea of the beer league, I was like, I don't think I want to do that. So I kind of hummed and hawed for about a month probably, and then finally said, you know what, screw it, let's try, and went in there and did the qualifying event. I mentioned this last week, how I did with that. Played about a month in. I was kind of poking around the forums a little bit, and there was a call asking for judges for the rookie design contest. I don't design. I'm new to the community, but I played golf for like 35 years. I think I figured I knew the difference between a good golf course and a not so good golf course. So basically said that to Patrick, who was running it, and was like, here's kind of my background, et cetera, et cetera. And he's like, yeah, sure, come on in. And so I ended up judging the rookie contest. It was being one of the judges of that. And from that's where we started streaming. And then that's how I got more involved in the community, both by the streaming and by the judging, and then just getting more involved in the community. So that's how I found out about it.
Yeah, it's I think I was basically the same way. When I got TGC 19 and started messing around with the course designer, I was trying to find information out there, like I do with most things that I struggle with. I go to YouTube, I go to Google, trying to find whatever. And at that time, back when that game was first out, it was basically Canuck, and I think maybe B101 had a few videos out at that time too that actually went into the tutorial side of it and actually try to teach people how to use it. And so at that time, it was a very limited resource. Yeah. So when I saw that Canuck was mentioning TGC Tours as a place to find some of the best courses in the game, it really used that as an opportunity to see a lot of these courses, to see what we were capable of in the designer. And then obviously in the forums, got involved there. I really kind of lurked for a long time until I was ready to publish my first course. And that's kind of when I started reaching out to some of these guys that were doing course playthroughs. Canuck at the time was doing some critiques. And then of course yourself. That's how, kind of got involved with your stream and requested a course playthrough from you as well. And from there, if you stay involved, you start seeing a lot of the same, usernames and throughout the forums and the chat, and you kind of just get involved there. I didn't really get into the competitive play side of it until I think fairly recently, at least this year, maybe January or February, when I first started playing more and finally getting into the TGC societies. And so from there, kept going off on that side. But when you hear TGC Tours, what do you think? Like, what do you think it is?
I mean, obviously it's a website first and foremost that has a forum attached to it. To me, there's two main roles that they fulfill. They run competitive events that are cross-platform, and they have 15 different divisions of it, probably 16. So, yeah. I mean, that's obviously, and TGC Tours, well, that kind of suggests that it's tour, like it's two tours, PGA Tour, TGC Tour, right? Suggests competitiveness. The other thing I think that they really do is they have that course database where you can go in, and because if you go on to the PGA Tour, and this was the same in TGC 19, if you go into the game looking for a course, good luck. You'll find all the official courses super easy. Mm-hmm. And after that, it's a complete coin flip as to what you'll find, because anybody can rate anything they want for whatever reason they want. And you'll have the best course in the game getting rated 1 out of 5 because the guy shot 80 on it.
Right.
So it seems to me that one of the things that TGC Tours was trying to do was have a collection of courses that you can come to this database and you'll find a decent course to go play, or maybe you'll find a great course to go play. And so they created some criteria around what they determined to be a good course that they would then want to have in that database to just kind of try to kind of whittle it down and get rid of a lot of the white noise that's out there, like the 75 different version of Pebble Beach that had looked nothing like Pebble Beach, for example.
Right. I don't know if a lot of people now, because PGA Tour 2K is the 4th iteration of the TGC series, I believe.
Yeah.
And TGC Tours, the website, was started back in 2014. 3 guys started, Tim Owens, who goes by Small0307, Jeff Reese, who goes by Smiling Goats, and Scott Doyley, who goes by Doyley. And Tim and Jeff were responsible a lot for the design of the website, the back end and the front end design there. Scott Doyley was and still is the tournament director, handled competition oversight, general administration, stuff like that. You still see him involved heavily in the Discord for TGC. The other two, I think one of them, Tim or Jeff, may have basically stepped away from that role, but I do believe the other one is still involved in the back end side of things.
I think Tim's still there, because when they had that glitch, it was Tim that needed to be the one to fix it. I remember.
Yeah. So, and that would kind of make sense because Tim actually is responsible for all the back end code.
Right.
And so when they created TGC, what they really wanted to do was, this was back in the original TGC, they wanted to create a site to host their society that emulated the PGA Tour events week to week.
Mm-hmm.
And to do that, they wanted to keep a list of courses that were built that either, were representations of the course that the players were going to play that week, the actual PGA players, or, were similar in vein. And so that's how the database got started. It was literally just a collection of courses that they felt would play well and be a good representation that they could put into their society for play. Obviously, as it has evolved and as their societies have grown, I think the big draw, even though there are societies out there with more members than TGC Tours, I think the big draw with TGC Tours is a couple of things. One, it's their ability to have cross-platform play. Because they got involved with HB Studios very early on, they were able to get a relationship with them where they could use their API and basically grab information from the game and then load that into their website so that they could grab scores from the Xbox guys, the PlayStation guys, the console guy, or the computer PC guys.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a score on there, they can grab it, they can compile it and put you with everyone else. Whereas other societies out there, they are console specific or platform specific,
right,
rather.
Yeah.
So even though, Barstool Sports or the official PGA Tours society may have a society on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC, when you play, you're only seeing scores from PlayStation, Xbox, and PC.
I found that frustrating that you only were playing against people on your console.
Yeah, that's one of the benefits, though, is that a lot of people don't have that because they don't have that API. They can't use that API data to, build up a society that is cross-platform.
Does anybody else have it?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I don't think so. And it'll be interesting to see whether or not TGC Tours is able to keep that relationship going and being able to keep that what would probably be considered proprietary information now that 2K Sports has purchased HB Studios, and HB Studios will be working, not in conjunction with anymore, but directly for 2K Sports. So it'll be interesting to see if they're not able to keep that going forward. What does that do to the society? I don't know. But before they had the API, people were just submitting their scores, and that's how they built their database and their cross platforms. People would submit their scores. That's a big headache, I'm sure. No one probably wants to go back to that, but we'll see. And then,
the other thing you need. Sorry, go ahead.
No. Interrupt. Go.
I think the other thing that's interesting too is will 2K make this cross-platform themselves, kind of eliminate the need for a society like this, where one of its biggest draws is its cross-platform nature. If 2K takes this cross-platform, well, then you don't really need that anymore.
Yeah, and that also opens up the ability for other companies, groups, whatever out there to have their own societies that, because they now can have that cross-platform play, may be more popular, depending on the settings and stuff like that. But for now, another thing that people, or I'm speaking for me, but I'm speaking in generalities here, I like that there's the ability to move up or move down based on how well you're playing.
Yep.
Week to week, you get promotion marks based on how you finish, and you get demotion marks based on how you finish. You accumulate so many promotion marks, and you move up to that next tier. Whether you're just moving up to the next CC level, from J to I, or from B to A, whatever it may be, or if you are moving up from kinetic to elite or elite to platinum. It gives you something that I think the in-game career mode does not, where the in-game career mode has the FedEx standings and all of that, but this is more, I can see myself progressing, or I can see myself taking some steps back, and I have, it's measured, and I can see other people, like you mentioned earlier, where you kind of start getting some, maybe not in-game rivalries, but people that and you see them climbing the leaderboards, and now they've made the jump and you want to try to follow them.
I think another thing that people don't talk a huge amount about that to me is a really cool thing is the world golf ranking that they have as well. You can look up, I mean, I think right now I'm like 296 or I know something like that in the high 200s. That's kind of a neat thing to be able to see. And you can see Sloaner's like #1 in the world. And the way they do it too is it doesn't completely replicate the official world golf ranking in real life, but it's close. It's got a lot of similarities. The one thing they don't, so the official world golf ranking is an average of your best 40, I think, out of your last 60 or something like that. And you have to, and it's a minimum of 40. So if you've played 2 events, your score gets divided by 40. It doesn't matter. Whereas the world golf ranking for TGC Tours, they just add up your best 40. So it's essentially the same thing. They just don't average it. They just give you get a total instead. But yeah, I think that's something that you don't hear a lot about. And I think a lot of people sleep on that. I think it's a really cool part of it. And it's something that for me, when I'm in a tournament where maybe I've made the cut on the number and I mean, I'm not going to win. I'm probably not going to get any promo marks, but there's still something to grind for. That the farther up the leaderboard I finish, the more points I'll get, the higher I'll go up in the world golf ranking. It's a neat thing. And even if I'm kind of close to the cut, it's still worth missing the cut by 1 or 2 because you'll still maybe get some points. I think a lot of people they miss out on that part and maybe give up too quickly because they forget about, or maybe they just don't put value in the world golf ranking. I don't know. I personally think it's cool.
I can't put too much value in it because my world golf ranking right now is like 2,600. And whereas you might jump 500 spots, I jump like 13 at a time. It also means I only go down like 6 at a time. This
is the kind of stuff that's cool, though, is that we can go, we can look at each other's scores. Lucas is another one of our friends who's he and I had a similar trajectory where we were both CC guys. We moved up. I moved up quicker than he did, but then he moved up farther than I did. So, but it's always kind of neat to see, okay, how did Lucas do this week? And we can have a little bit of a rivalry where, I mean, in my Discord, he said something like, oh, somebody's got a higher world golf ranking now. This is fun. It's good times.
It is a great way for people to interact. There are some people that will have zero interaction. They just play their rounds and that's all they do. And they just worry about themselves. And that's fine. But for the people that do want, you know, a little more social interaction with their societies, I think TGC Tours, because of its heavy involvement with a lot of the people that stream, you know, a lot of people that stream this game are doing so because of their TGC Tour society. And the forums themselves, even though the forums, I use the forums more for the design side, but there's still plenty of space in there that's being used for the TGC Tours society. And then of course the Discord, you know, the Discord's fairly active and people, you know, talking about their rounds or talking about the game. That's just one aspect of what TGC Tours has become. The other side of it is the design side. And I don't have right now a lot of information about how that side came about, but I would imagine it was a natural progression from trying to build the database. Because when it first came out, you know, the database was pulling from courses from TGC and TGC2. And it was still, the game was still maybe not in its infancy, but it was, you know, a crawling toddler. And the people that were designing in the game, their handle on the tools and their ability to create courses was not where it is today. And so the good courses that were out there were very few and far between. And so you may have some information on it, but I would think that they would say, you know, they'd probably start soliciting ideas like, hey, if you guys know a good course or you guys have put out a course and you want to see it on tour, send us the name of it and we'll take a look at it. And, you know, you might see it in an event.
I think, and that this kind of goes nicely into, there's a guy out there made this video about whether TGC Tours is a clique. Not sure if you know the guy. He's, you know, kind of middle-aged, might have still had a beard then, I'm not sure. Anyways, and I think a lot of where that comes from is the design. Well, I think all of it where it comes from is the design side. And I think it comes from the fact that you had guys like Crazy Canuck, who like I think Reed was around pretty early on, I think. And over time, you've had more and more people kind of become accepted within the group as being good designers. And there's this, and they've created the review system now for courses, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that for a lot of people whose courses don't get approved to the database, or maybe they get approved, but they don't really get much play or much attention, there's this feeling that, well, these guys want to keep a closed shop. They don't want to let anybody else in. And that's why I'm not getting courses accepted, or I'm not getting the exposure that I want. In my opinion, that's not the case. In my opinion, basically, and I think we're going to this is jumping around a lot of what our show notes are, but TGC Tours at some point said, okay, here's what we want in a course that we're going to put on our database, remembering that the primary purpose of the database was, and probably still is, a place to keep a list of courses that you might want to use in one of your tour events. And so in order to be a course to be considered for a tour event and then thus be in the database, these are the things that we want to have. And these are the things that we don't want to have. I think one of the things that's important to understand is TGCTours.com is a website owned by those three people, would be my guess. The three people that started it.
Yep.
It's their game in the sense of it's their site. They get to set the rules. Because it's gotten so popular, people seem to have this idea that, well, all I need to do is create a course and it'll go in the database. And how dare you not accept it, which I find odd. And then there also seems to be this feeling of, well, you owe me this. I don't get that. So is it a clique? No, not to me. It isn't. I don't even design. I just do videos and I stream, and then my videos are basically VODs of my stream. I've been around since November, maybe. I started streaming in January.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of the really well-renowned designers and prominent members of the community are consistently in my streams and are interacting and inviting me to play in other games. I don't think a clique would be, especially somebody who doesn't design. I mean, if it's a clique, why are they letting me in?
Right. And my opinion is kind of the same as yours, but from a different perspective, because I do consider TGC Tours, at least a portion of it, mostly the design portion of it, to be a clique. I'm going to say clique because I'm just not used to saying clique. I consider it a clique the same way I consider any fandom to be a clique. Look at your favorite TV show, your favorite movie series, your favorite sports team. The fandom that has built up around it is going to be a clique, in that they are going to have a singular shared point of interest around this thing, whether it's a movie, TV show, band, or a sports team. And that fandom is going to create its own language, its own inside jokes, its own, kind of hierarchy of fans, because you'll have your super fans, you'll have your casuals, you'll have your bandwagon guys that'll get called. You'll have your guys that only throw on their Dallas jerseys when they make the playoffs.
You'd be a great Leafs fan.
But for people on the outside looking in, it can look very insular and exclusive. And you feel like, okay, especially for those fandoms that are heavily established. Like, let's take a TV show, for instance, okay? A TV show that's been on for a while, Breaking Bad, okay? Breaking Bad had its run. It's been over for quite some time now. I think it was over in 2012, maybe 2013.
It's been that long? Wow.
Yeah. And,
okay.
But it still garners new fans because people, hear about it or finally give it a shot. They didn't think it was them. And then they get into it. And for people like that, whenever they go to, maybe it's a subreddit on reddit.com, or it's a forum, or it's a Discord or whatever, it can feel difficult for them to start interacting because they're interacting from a new perspective where they don't know all the ins and outs. They don't know the rules conduct or the unwritten rules, so they start asking questions that may seem dumb, or the answers are taken for granted from the established members. And in every fandom, there are going to be people that don't have any patience for new fans.
Right. Because they've heard that question a million times and they're sick of it.
Right. They don't have any patience. And so it's unfortunate that it doesn't matter what it is, there's going to be people out there that are rude, if not just completely, dismissive of new fans. And that's unfortunate. And that's not just TGC Tours and the design community. That is everything out there. But there are also the people out there who love nothing more than to talk about their favorite thing with someone new.
Yeah.
Because it gives them the opportunity to, discuss what they do in their spare time with someone that's going to be genuinely interested in hearing what they have to say. Yeah. And I think on that note, I think the design community specifically in TGC Tours is that way.
It's very welcoming, yeah.
I think they love nothing more, most of them love nothing more than to talk design with people that have questions. There are those that have been established for quite some time that have heard every question out there a million times.
How long does it take to design a course?
How long does it take to design a course? What's your favorite course you've ever played? How do I make a mountain? How do I make green transitions? Stuff like that. These are valid questions from people that are just entering the community, and they shouldn't be dismissed outright. But these guys that are new or coming in also need to understand that there are places more willing to answer those kind of questions than perhaps a Crazy Canuck stream or a B101 stream, or something like that, where those guys have just been inundated with those questions for years.
I think where people start getting in trouble with TGC Tours in the sense of maybe not being accepted as part of the group, because I'm not going to call it a clique, because to me a clique is small and you are not getting in no matter what. That's how I looked up the definition of clique, right? And that's what it said. But I completely get where you're coming from too. I think for people that struggle, it's one of two things. It's either it's like I come down to Dallas, I go to the biggest Cowboys bar there is. I go in there and I say, geez, that Troy Aikman was so overrated. I can't believe they put him in the Hall of Fame. He sucked.
What?
Who jumps when they throw a pass? What was Staubach all about? It's a shame that Romo can't hold the ball for the guy to kick a field goal.
Jeez.
Right?
You're killing me.
This whole the America's team, okay, right? Like you just going in there and basically antagonizing everyone in there, whether they're intending to or not, going in and basically saying, you guys are all idiots to be Cowboys fans. I know better because I'm an Eagles fan, or I'm who else in that division, Giants fan, or whoever, right? And then wondering why you walk out needing 20 stitches, not quite remembering what happened because you're concussed. I think most people understand that, right? You wouldn't go into a bar of a certain sports team where that is the team and then disparage that team and expect to get a good reaction. Right. You might go in there looking to stir it up, and that's what you're trying to do, and you're trying to be a dink, and that's exactly what you're going for, to rile everybody up. But like most people would know that that's going to happen, that you're not going to be accepted, that people are going to tell you to get lost, or you might suffer some bodily harm of some kind.
I think in your analogy, maybe a little, you'd probably be hard pressed to find an Eagles fan that would, well, maybe not because Eagles fans are jerks, but to find just another team's fan that would walk into whatever, maybe a rival team, hangout, whatever, and just start spouting nonsense about the team. But there's probably people that are fans of football, maybe have no particular affiliation with any team in general, but they think because they're surrounded by other fans of football,
right,
that whenever they just start talking in generalities about football, like, man, I can't believe Dallas's draft, like they should have done this, that, and the other. It's not particularly talking bad about Dallas, like Dallas sucks, but it's coming from a standpoint of like, I know football. I would, here's how you should run your team.
Right.
And this, that, and the other. But it still is taken as offense, even though it may not be personal to a Cowboys fan. I'm not saying the Cowboys suck. I'm not saying I don't like the Cowboys. I'm saying that if I were the GM, I would do things 100% differently.
And so, so just to take that analogy then and apply it to the TGC Tour side, I think we've had some examples of people that have come into the community, have submitted courses, have gotten feedback that it wasn't approved, and then have basically gone and said, you guys haven't got a clue what you're talking about. I know better because of this and that and the other. You basically need to include my course in your database. By the way, you should be playing it on tour every week. And actually, you should have me as a reviewer so that I can now help you have a better site because you don't know what you're doing. And so that's kind of the analogy I was going for of I know you don't. And there seems to be this surprise that when you go into another community that's been there for quite a while, that has a set of established norms, and you go in telling them how everything they're doing is wrong, you're surprised that they don't like that.
Yeah.
And there's,
go ahead.
I was just saying there's just examples. I'm not going to name any of them because I don't want to call anyone out on here, but there's examples of that happening where you just kind of look at it and go, do you not get it? Do you not understand that you are doing everything possible to make people not want you to be a part of this community?
Right. And the two things to piggyback off of that, the worst thing that can happen in that case is if that new person, if their opinion is actually correct or, shared by a large majority, if they're coming in with an opinion of, maybe golf strategy, for example, if they present that in such a way that it's like, look, you need to take my advice because, I played on the Corn Ferry Tour for a year and a half and I carry a scratch, I'm a +3 handicap and I've played 1,000 courses and I have real life golf experience and this is why. Even though that opinion itself may be sound, the reasoning behind it isn't going to cut it for these course designers because quite frankly, the best designers in the game don't care about your real life golf experience. It can help. It can help you in terms of course design, or it can help you in terms of course reviews or whatnot, because you have a nice foundation about why things are the way they are, but it has no bearing at all on how you use the design tools to create a course that plays well inside a video game.
Yeah.
But if you start throwing your weight around there and throwing your opinions, whether shared or not, it will put a bad taste in people's mouths immediately.
And I just think that it's I don't think very many people enjoy it when somebody comes in and basically announces themselves by saying, I know more than you guys do. I think when you kind of gradually work your way into a community and gradually kind of mention some of the things that you've done, and then when it seems appropriate, kind of say, geez, guys, I have a thought, I have a suggestion, maybe, I don't know what you guys think of this, rather than just here's the hammer and here's why I'm right and you're wrong. Like if you're in a social environment and somebody walks into your group and starts telling you, I'm so smart and you guys are so dumb and, I have all this knowledge that you guys don't have and you need to listen to me. How often does that work?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that when I first started visiting TGC Tours and the forum side, I was very much a lurker.
Yeah.
I read a lot. Even when I started watching some of the live streams, started watching, Canucks YouTube live streams, was really always in the background and just kind of, and maybe that's actually just who I am as a person. And anytime I'm in a situation with a bunch of people that I don't know, I always take a minute to feel out the room. Every group of people is different. There's going to be some, everything from your sense of humor to the, jokes you try to tell. It's not going to play the same way for some people as it is others. Topics to talk about, things like that, just basic decorum. it's going to vary from group to group. And same thing with any online community, especially an established online community. You can't just come in without anybody knowing who you are. Doesn't matter what your credentials are. If you start throwing your weight around and throwing your opinions around, especially when those opinions go directly against or are directly about some of those more established members of that community, you will get blowback. You know, if you come in and start saying, I don't know why anybody listens to Canuck. I don't know why anybody listens to Andre. He has no idea what he's doing. He has no background in actual course architecture. He has no background in landscaping. He's self-admitted himself that he's not an artist. Why would you ever listen to him? Well, because none of that stuff actually matters when you're designing a virtual video game golf course. But if you take that tone and take that stance and then wonder why you're not being invited to the barbecue, you know, it's pretty obvious from any outside perspective.
Yeah. And I think so there was two things that I think people get in trouble with the TGC tours and where they're not necessarily welcomed, let's say. I think the other one is the person who comes in and says, how do I create a bunker? And they're told, well, you know, you need to use the tools. Here's a great tutorial that you can watch. It'll give you, you know, one of Canucks tutorials. It'll give you this, it'll give you that. Oh, okay. How do I do a green shape? And it's constantly little, and it's basically the answer to that question is the same thing every time of, I'm not trying to be mean when I say this. There is information out there that you can go and find. I'm giving it to you. You just need to watch this. You also need to understand that you're looking for a 3-second answer to a 30-minute problem.
Right.
And you don't want to put the time into. And so I think for an established designer who spends anywhere on the order of 60, 80, 100, 200, 300 hours creating a course, to have somebody come in and want to know in 10 minutes how to create a great golf course, I'm not going to say it's necessarily insulting, but it can kind of feel that way. It can, because you know how much time you've put into it. You know how much time you put in learning it. And this person wants to just come in and find it out right now. And it doesn't work that way. I just think that there's a lot of people that just aren't willing to take the resources that they've put a lot of work into creating as well.
Yeah, there is a certain amount of research that the onus is on the person trying to enter the community to do before they try to, you know, interact at a level. I'm not saying that you can't come in and just start saying, "Hey guys, I'm new here. I'm starting a new course. You know, looking to get some tips and blah blah blah." But maybe back in the early days of the TGC and TGC2, when there weren't those online resources readily available, you'd have a lot more of that kind of beginner level talk throughout the forums or throughout the live streams. But now that it's not just Canuck and B101 anymore. There are tons of people out there that are now streaming their course designs, or they have their own tutorial videos, or they have their own review videos, that there's enough out there that a quick Google search or a quick search on YouTube will net you a wealth of knowledge to start you on a path, so that your questions no longer become, how do I sculpt a green? They become more like, hey, how do I design a green on a drivable par 4 to be both a risky shot but provide some reward, so, you know, I can challenge a golfer? They become more pointed questions that I think an established designer would want to answer, because it's more of a challenging question to them. Yeah. And it's a question that doesn't necessarily, they don't have to go, you know, hey, how do you sculpt a green? I mean, I got 3 videos on that and they're all 45 minutes long. You know, I just can't answer that question. Like you were saying, it's a 30-minute answer to that when they want, you know, a quick 2-liner.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of, I mean, I was always a decent golfer, like playing in real life, and I would often end up, none of my friends play golf, so I'd end up playing with strangers. And after about 9 holes or so, I'd be playing half decently, and somebody would want a tip to hit the ball 20 yards farther. And I just would be like, well, I don't have it for you. I don't mean to be mean about this, but you're asking for something that is going to take hours, like multiple tens of hours to get. It's not as simple as I have this magic formula that you don't have. It's that I've spent years and years getting good at this. And when you look at B101's courses and you look at his most recent one, that's not a guy who just one day decided to design golf courses and all of a sudden decided to design golf courses like that. That's hour upon hour upon hour of studying other course designers' techniques, watching tutorials, playing other courses, absorbing everything, reading books, etc., to then come up with his style. And I think a lot of people don't want to do all that stuff. And that's true of just about anything we do in life. People want to, if somebody says, I want to learn how to play the guitar today. They don't want to go worrying about the little boring, okay, well, I need to learn what an F chord is or a G chord or whatever that is. No, I want to play Johnny Be Good. Let's go.
Right.
And it doesn't work that way.
I think golf is a great example for that, and a great example for a lot of things in life, because watch any PGA event, okay? Or watch LPGA, it doesn't matter. Watch anybody playing golf. Watch a high school golf tournament, it doesn't matter. The point is, the results that these players get may look the same, but the way they get there is so different and unique to each individual that there is no one answer that anyone can give. Because just like yourself, if the answer you give to someone that wants to drive the ball 20 yards farther, it's going to come from your experience. Mm-hmm. And it's going to come from what you're capable of doing. And that same that person may not be capable of doing the same thing. You know, it comes down to things like hand-eye coordination, or, you know, flexibility, or, you know, physiology, how tall you are, how long your clubs are, things like that. Mm-hmm. They may not literally be capable, but they may be able to get the same results in a different way, but you're not going to be able to teach them that. Now,
especially not on the 10th tee of a golf tournament or a golf course where you want this tip right now.
Right. Now, there is a foundation that everyone can have, right? Yeah. In golf, in course design, in life, in a lot of different skills. There is a base foundation that is a common ground for everyone. And then from there, you start building in your own techniques and finding out what works for you. And maybe it's different than a lot of people. You know, look at Matt Wolf's golf swing.
Yeah.
I mean, he has this whole little like kick out, tilt, you know, big fast backswing, looping downswing. And if you tried to go out there and emulate that because you like the results that Matt Wolf is getting, it's not going to happen. He has channeled something just like Jim Furyk has. Yeah. That's not a golf swing that you teach, because you can't teach it.
No.
Okay. But you can take some basic nuggets from it. You can take his, you know, the way he aligns, the way his stance over the ball. You can take, you know, his downswing, the way he's got an inside out swing plane. There are things you can take from it and build a foundation. Same thing with course design. But if you come in and you haven't built up that foundation, if you haven't gone through and figured out what each individual tool does, your sculpt raise, your sculpt flatten, your red brush and your blue brush, even though a lot of people don't know what the difference is between those two, now when you come in and you have questions, as I mentioned earlier, the questions aren't general, how do you do this? They're more pointed questions specifically for a certain topic. Not how do I create a bunker, but why should I put a bunker, you know, here as opposed to directly in the middle of my fairway? You know, what sort of strategy does that invoke? Things like that.
Or I've got a big hill behind my green and I want to put a bunker back there. How do I put it so that it's not like basically vertical? Mm-hmm. Which should be my high side or my low side? You know, what's the best tool maybe to sculpt it with? That kind of stuff. Yeah, where it gets to be more more pointed, like you're saying, more specific. I think kind of moving from that, there was something else we want to talk about. And I think this is a good thing for you to talk about because, well, you've actually designed, of course I haven't. So what was the path for approval to this database like for you?
I had been designing courses since TGC 19, but I had not published a full 18-hole course ever until October of 2020. And so I had a lot of experience messing around in the designer, but when I found TGC Tours and found their process to get involved in their database, I took it kind of as a challenge to myself. And I think like a lot of others, it's sort of acts as a validation for your efforts.
Sure.
It says, okay, someone's taken a look at my course and they said, your course is good enough to be included in a list of other courses that we've deemed to be good enough. And so the review process on TGC Tours is fairly simple. They have some standard guidelines that they want all of the courses that are submitted to follow, but that's just
Right.
because their courses in their database, again, are being used for their tournament play. And their tournament play in their societies is never going to have a 9-hole course, and it's never going to have a par 3 course. So they're not going to include those, no matter how good yours happens to be. But you make your course, you design it, you publish it, and then you submit the name of your course and a little bit of details to the forum in like a little survey thing that you fill out and submit in. And then if your course is accepted, a couple of weeks go by and you'll get an email and it'll say, congratulations, your course has been accepted into the database. That's basically it. If it doesn't get accepted, you don't get an email, but most of the time, the reviewer who reviewed your course, there is a section of the TGC forums specifically for courses that were not accepted, where the reviewer will go in, state your course name, and tell you that it was not accepted and give you some short reasons why.
Right.
That process in of itself can seem, if you're accepted, it's cool. You get to share with your friends or the Discord channels you're on or whatever. Hey guys, my course has been accepted. It does offer some level of validation if that's what you consider validation. But on the flip side of it, if you're not accepted, generally what you're going to see is, J Raygun course 1, not approved. Various sculpting issues throughout, some unintentional blindness off of tees, pins inaccessible on, orange slopes. And that's about the only details you're going to get. And the reason for that is there are so many courses out there being submitted that these reviewers don't have time to go into detail about why your course was not approved.
Yeah. I've got an example right here of a not approved.
Sure.
So such and such course not approved. Continue to work on sculpting because the course, while definitely flat in most spots, has a lot of unintentional blindness whenever you raise a portion of land. Additionally, the surface color choices are really hard on the eyes when combined with bold mowing lines and bright noon lining. That might be one that's more got more detail than some do.
Yeah. Some will basically say major sculpting issues throughout. I suggest you watch Crazy Canuck or B101's tutorials on sculpting. And that's it.
Yep. Here's a question. Is it reasonable as a designer to expect more of that? And is it reasonable for TGC Tours to not provide more than that?
Here's my perspective on that. Again, I talk about a lot of the responsibility being on the designer themselves to take it upon themselves and establish that foundation before they put themselves out there.
Okay.
I think there are multiple places in the TGC Tours community, whether it's on the forums, whether it's on the Discord, whether it's on, a Facebook page or anything. There are multiple avenues to ask for feedback along the way as you design. You can submit pictures. You can publish a beta, which is basically publishing your unfinished course under a name, typically a name that's not going to be anywhere close to what your publishing name is, JRG Beta 2.0, and asking people to play that so that you get some feedback. And I would suggest to any designer out there, don't think about publishing your course and submitting it to the database if you have not solicited some outside feedback in other places.
Yes.
There are works in progress threads on the TGC forums that are specifically made for this. And there are tons of members of this community who love nothing more than to play this random course and give their opinions. Now, some of those opinions are going to be better than others. Some of them are going to be more detailed than others. It's going to, again, be up to the designer to filter through those and figure out which ones are worth taking on. But the designer is putting themselves out there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I can empathize with someone who puts time and effort into doing something, no matter what it is, and they put themselves out there and ask for judgment.
Mm-hmm.
It can be scary. It can be, nerve-wracking. I mean, it's pretty low stakes when we're talking about virtual golf courses, but people feel like if they've put in the time and effort, then when they come back and they're judged, and maybe they're judged harshly, it can hit pretty hard, especially when your personal opinions about your project are not shared
right
by others.
Yeah, and the other thing is who likes rejection, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's part of it. Where I stand on this when it comes to, is it reasonable to expect TGC Tours to give more than what they give in that database or in that thread? Sorry, I've gone to TGC Pro Boards, TGCTours.proboards.com. So their forum, and I've gone to completed courses, and the very first post, which is stickied, is the TGC Tours course database guidelines from Crazy Canuck, who's their head reviewer. And it says, if your course is not approved and you're curious why, please take the following steps. First, read the post below, and it's got the minimum requirements. I'm not going through all of them because there's a ton. Also check out B101's video on the general do's and don'ts when it comes to getting your course approved. Search your course in the not accepted thread to see who reviewed it and what feedback it received. If you have further questions, please send the reviewer and or Crazy Canuck a private message. Any sort of verbal abuse towards reviewers will not be tolerated. You're welcome to disagree, but please have a thoughtful, respectful dialogue with us. And then when we look at the guidelines for being approved, it's basically my entire screen and then a little bit more of what they're looking for. So there's a very clear criteria of this is what we look for in a course we are accepting to our database. And I go, this goes back to your suggestion that it's on the designer to know that, to do that research, to find out. It's not like it's some hidden secret of how you get your course approved. They've put it right on the site. Here's what you do.
Right. And I think something that a designer needs to know, and I think there are some designers that don't understand this, and then I think there are some designers that know this fact but don't take it to heart. When you are putting your course out there to get accepted, you're not putting it out there to the public at large. You're not asking for a Twitter vote. You're not asking for, this is not a democracy. Okay. This is not for everyone to vote on. This is an oligarchy where there are, truthfully, there are a few members, the reviewers, that do hold the key to whether your course is going to be accepted or not. They have established a criteria, a baseline criteria that they follow, and they have their own shared opinions about courses and whether or not they're accepted or not when they meet that criteria. This is personal opinion that is shared pretty universally between the reviewers, but it still comes from a place of personal opinion. If you don't want your course to be judged by a small group of people, and when we're talking about it, it's really going to be one reviewer that's looking at your course. But for the sake of argument, I'm considering that one reviewer to be the group of reviewers, since we like to think their opinions are shared. If you don't want that, then don't submit your course. If you can't get past that, you're not asking everyone, hey, what do you think about my course? You're asking a small group of people, or necessarily one person. You have to understand that your chances of getting accepted into the database are, maybe cut significantly because you're not getting opinions from 10 people.
And to add to that, what do you get by having your course accepted into the database? What does it do for your course?
Here's my advice for people that are designing courses. Do not design your course with the intention of getting accepted into the database. And here's why. There are thousands of courses in the database. Being accepted, while it can offer you some validation in terms of courses, there are courses that are not accepted and there are courses that are accepted. In the grand scheme of things, being accepted is good, but if your course is not what the TGC reviewers consider tour worthy, meaning it has a chance to be placed on one of their society tours, the chances of your course being lost among the noise of all of the other courses is the same as if it was not accepted at all. TGC Tours will not be a champion or a cheerleader in any official capacity for your course simply because it was approved. Even if your course is approved, it is up to you as a designer to be the media personality for your course. You're still going to have to put it out there. Get on Twitter, get on YouTube, get on the forums themselves and say, hey, here's my course. Come play my course. Because at that point, accepted means nothing. Can they find your course in the database? Sure. But, is it important for the success of your course? No. There are plenty of courses out there that get hundreds of plays, thousands of plays, that either weren't accepted to the TGC database, weren't ever submitted to the TGC database, or they were accepted, but they're not considered tour worthy for various reasons. So as you design, one, you need to design for yourself and design a course that you find fun and that you are proud of in the end. And two, if you really want to get into that database, you really want to take those steps to try and shoot for tour worthy, which means your course has to be immaculate and your course has to have both strategy to make it entertaining and it has to have a look to make it engaging. Being accepted at that point is not going to really meet those two criteria. You really have to go above and beyond. So, I think if you operate at either ends of those spectrums, if you make your course and at the end of it, you're proud and happy and you like your course and you go play with your friends and you have fun, awesome. You've done your job. But if you want to be involved, if you want to get in that database, if that's your validation, I think you really want to shoot for tour worthy and have a chance to have your course put on a tour, because that's how you're going to get the biggest push from TGC Tours if they put your course on a tour.
Right.
That's what's going to get you those plays. One thing I did want to mention before we move on is I do have numbers for the amount of courses submitted, approved, not approved, and considered tour worthy. Because I think there's this stigma out there, again, that goes along with, is TGC Tours a click? Is it exclusive? Do they not want, or click? Do they not want people to to have success, but they want to keep it to the, core designers. So since August 21st, 2020, when the game was released, this does not include courses that were designed in TGC 19 that were then ported over to PGA Tours. So these numbers are just courses that were designed and submitted within PGA Tour 2K. Since August 21st, 2020, there have been, and these numbers are recent as of May 4th. So take that in mind. They're a couple of weeks stale, but they basically serve the same purpose. There have been 1,859 courses submitted for database inclusion since August 21st, 2020. 737 of those have been not approved. That amounts to about 40%, 39.6%, but about 40%. The other 60% have been approved. And of that, 354 of those courses have been tour worthy. That's 19%. Recently, April 14th of 2021, the reviewers and the head reviewer and everybody associated with that, which, by the way, it bears mentioning, all these guys are volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
They don't get paid for anything. And so all the time that they spend playing your course, writing forum posts, doing that, guys that do video playthroughs and video reviews, they're doing it of their own volition and their own free will. So keep that in mind if you're a designer and you're trying to communicate with these guys. They've taken time out of their day to play your course and give it a fair shake. So hopefully you keep that in mind. And April 14th, the review guys decided to change some of their policies in terms of acceptance into the database and tour worthy. They basically made it a little bit easier to get accepted, and they made it a little harder to get tour worthy. Since April 14th, 2021, there have been 111 courses submitted between April 14th and May 4th. 26 were not approved. That's a 23.4% not approved, down from 40% previously. So you've almost cut the not approved rate in half. And the tour worthy percentage is 21 out of 111, which is just about 19%. Now, those tour worthy numbers are a bit skewed because you've had a couple you've had World Cup of Design, you've had a couple of design contests, which the courses that come out of those design contests are usually some of the top courses you're going to see in the game, almost universally going to be tour worthy courses. And so that number skews up a bit. I think as we go on and we see more and more courses submitted, you'll see that tour worthy status creep down into maybe the 15%.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, and so all those numbers really tell you is, number one, they're not just not approving courses left and right. Okay, right now, if you were to submit your course and it meets the base guidelines for what they have for submitting, you have only about a 20% chance of being not approved. Okay, and so at that point, if you're not approved, it's because your course has some major problems, and you have to be honest with yourself and look at yourself and look at your course when you get that feedback, to look at it and go, okay, does my course really compare to these others that are approved? What sets it apart? What can I improve upon? Otherwise, you have an almost an 80% chance of getting your course approved. You kind of look at that from two sides. Does that make it more inclusive? Yes. Does that mean that if you are approved, does that mean as much as it used to? That's up to you to decide.
Yeah.
To me, I'm not going to put worth personally on acceptance. Acceptance is just a step along the way. My goal is always to, one, submit the best course that I can possibly create, and two, hopefully submit a course that, if it is accepted, also starts to get into the argument of being tour worthy, because that to me puts you in the upper tier, in the upper percentage of courses being accepted in the database. So if that's what you're using as your criteria, then that's what you need to shoot for, is that tour worthy. That's why I really wanted to share those numbers with you.
Yeah, that makes sense. And again, it further puts evidence to the idea that it isn't a clique in the sense of it being a closed shop that nobody can get into, which is good.